Okay, friends, you know the story. When the Band-Aid comes off, the truth comes out. Now this is Yitzhak Simcha, the street Jew, and I'm reporting for Israel Rising. It's an excellent article, Confining Meir Ettinger. Israel tries to derail a revolution. This is by David Mark. It was written on February 3rd, 2016. Okay. When one strolls the streets of Jerusalem these days, Meir Ettinger's picture is everywhere. The posters demand justice for the young activist. After all, no one has charged him with anything, and yet he remains in administrative detention, now for another 4 months. And just as a quick aside, I was there at the court. I had the honor of driving his wife there. Ettinger tried to influence the latest decision by going on a hunger strike, which rallied many right-wing activists behind him, but the security apparatus appears unshaken. Thanks, defenseless minister Bogi Ya'alon. The question that remains is what is the state of Israel so threatened by, which causes them to hold Ettinger for so long? This will be 10 months. He's already in there for 6 months, folks. The answer to this, one must look back into the annals of Zionist history. Although the Zionist movement's goals were to attain statehood in the land of Israel, the movement grew in various ways and approaches in reaching this goal. For most, the state of Israel was a solution to a greater issue. 3 distinct types of Zionism had formed by the time the Jews of the Holy Land revolted against the British Empire. Settling the land leads to sovereignty. Practical Zionism sprung forth in the late 19th century by way of land purchases in Israel, led by the lovers of Zion, in quotes. Movement practical Zionists believed that the most important action was to settle as much of the land of Israel as possible. In their eyes, independence would be driven by control and could only be sought after once the land was settled. Statecraft was not on their radar. Speeches will gain us standing. Political Zionism took the heart of the failure of the European Jews' emancipation and decided to win supporters for resettlement in the land of Israel. Those who ascribed hoped for a Jewish nation in the international community and believed that this Jewish state could be attained by appealing to friendly nations, of the need to avoid a Jewish catastrophe. Herzl was a political Zionist. Although the World Zionist Congress and the World Zionist Organization, the WIZO under Jabotinsky, achieved global notoriety, sovereignty was not decided in the halls of law around the world. Only one form of Zion merged all of the necessary components to be able to take on the British Empire. Zionism is about national Jewish liberation. When Menachem Begin became the head of the Irgun, he adopted the Lehi's outlook on revolutionary Zionism. This, of course, was not a surprise, as the Israel Eldad became the philosophical head of Lehi after Avram Stern was killed. Eldad and Begin were good friends and chess partners. Their brand of Zionism saw the direct need to push each and every occupying power out of the land of Israel. Zev Golan writes in his book, Stern and His Gang, for Lehi, sovereignty was not a solution but a goal, an expression of Jewish culture. As any nation-state, the expression of a people's culture. The few hundred Lehi fighters in 1943 declared themselves determined to fight war to liberate their homeland from the foreigner. It mattered not to them whether this foreigner was a Turk, as it had been, British, as it was then, or someone else in the future. The Lehi fighters desired to establish the Hebrew kingdom based upon our historic rights, on our national desire, as expressed in all messianic longings and attempts. Lohamei Herut Israel collected writings. The revolution continues. When we succeeded in chasing the British Empire out of the land of Israel, the nation was not ready for its destiny. It's true the state of Israel is successful, but goals of the Zionist revolution as envisioned by Begin and Eldad have never been accomplished. Building a true Jewish state, one that pushes its sovereignty to all corners of our biblical promise, has not come about. Large areas of our ancestral homeland lie under the feet of foreign occupation. The Temple Mount, liberated by fearless Jewish warriors in 1967, stands defiled and trampled by urinating masses of Muslims who care more about controlling the holiest site to the Jews than treating it with respect. Jews are still murdered for daring to return to their ancestral homeland, and politicians care far more about Western values than being proud Jewish leaders. Meir Ettinger was arrested six months ago and is still confined because he dared to speak the truth. There have been no charges filed against Meir. But he is the most dangerous man in Israel. Why? Simply because he called for the revolution to continue. And why not? After all, Jewish destiny, at the end of the day, is messianic. Meir's revolt was not physical. If it was, it would not last. The government in Israel is scared of the most potent revolt of all, an awakening. That we have incomplete work here. For the elites who run the state of Israel are truly scared. Now, I call them globalists. They are. People call them globalists. They are scared because their destiny expresses the internal struggle held within. That we may actually be who we say we are. And our return is more than just a temporal liberation, but rather the ultimate liberation, which, if allowed to reach fruition, can liberate the entire world. Deep down inside, we all know the system we live in is a system that defines state institutions as divine. However, a system that disconnects itself from its divine mission does not get to claim inherent divinity. Divinity is attained by expressing that which is held within each one of us. The Zionist revolution will only be complete when the state of Israel returns to the mission it was intended for, and that is the complete and total liberation of Zion, with the goal of setting up a true and righteous kingdom. So that's the end of the article. Confining Meir Ettinger. I printed it out in 2 pages. By David Mark. Now, I will say that these current leaders in Israel are like the leaders, the spies in the desert. And I'll quote, I'll put in the comments chapter and verse because I don't have it in the top of my head. But the spies in the desert were mostly were afraid of losing their power. That's why they didn't want the Jews to come into Israel. They were afraid that when the Jews came into Israel and realized the true Torah-based government, the true Jewish state, because right now we have a state of Jews, but not a Jewish state. There's a majority of Jews here, but it's just a state of Jews. It's not a Jewish state. So when the spies were in the desert, they felt that we would become empowered and emancipated under this new government, and therefore they would no longer be needed. And that was kind of incorrect. I mean, had they passed the power on to the people in a legitimate fashion, they still would have been leaders of the tribes. I mean, they were leaders of their tribe. So they could have stayed and remained leaders. But because they questioned their own ability, they diminished themselves and diminished the people and basically frightened the people into what ended up becoming a 40-year trudge through the wilderness instead of an immediate entry into the land and the fulfillment of what we're still waiting for today and what we're being denied for today by this present government, by people like Meir Ettinger being held. We need to free Meir Ettinger now, people. Free him now. You should tweet this, the article that I'm going to attach to this, and this video, one or both, You got to tweet these out. You got to Facebook them. You got to fax the Knesset members. You've got to get this young man out of jail. He's under no charges. Under no charges. Why? Because he wants a Jewish state? The one that Moses wanted? The one that God wants? That's terrorism now? That's terrorism? For us to want a Jewish state? That's why I came here. That's why I live in Israel. I don't live in Israel for some Hellenist la-di-da. I could have that in America. I could be back in America doing that. I came here for a Torah-based government, a Jewish state. And don't even go to the whole Sharia thing, because Judaism and Torah law has nothing to do with that. Okay? You're talking about God and the devil. You're talking about the devil's playbook and God's playbook. And we are under Torah law, under God's playbook. Thank you.